Hi everybody, and welcome to this, which is the 12th, 13th Co-op Women's Voices event and interviews. So these started a couple of years ago when Sarah and I thought it'd be a great idea to have a chat with lots of really interesting women from the co-op movement in different sectors from around the world. So we've spoken to some absolutely fascinating women from lots of different countries. We've spoken with Mirai Chatterjee in India, we've spoken with Sonia Diaz in Brazil, spoken to lots of people from the UK, and today delighted to welcome Melina Morrison from BCCM in Australia. So we'll hear lots more about BCCM and from Melina shortly. But just to introduce a little bit more about Co-op Women's Voices. So I'm Rebecca Harvey. I'm editor of Co-op News, which is a magazine and news website about co-ops around the world. And with me is Sarah Aldred, who is International Partnerships. No, head of, Sarah, what are you now?
That's a good question. Who am I? Head of International Partnerships.
Head of International Partnerships at the Co-op College, which is the educational arm of the movement in the UK. So Co-op Women's Voices really came out of this thing called the Co-op Women's Challenge, which started in the UK about 10 years ago in Manchester, and it was designed to empower women working in the co-op movement. So how can women support each other? How can we build confidence? How can we ensure a work-life balance that is good and healthy? So as I said, there's been about 12 or 13 of these events now. Sarah and I started these as webinars, and we ended them up as meetings just to speak to some of these women, to find out a bit more about them, who supported them on their journey, where they are now, and what they're doing. So Sarah's going to be leading the questions today, and I'll be chipping in. If anyone does have any questions, because there are only a few of us today, if anyone wants to just put their hand up or raise their hand and join in the conversation, that'd be great. If you'd rather just type something in the chat, that will be fine too. If you're not speaking, it'd be great if you could keep yourselves on mute, just so that there's not so much feedback. But yeah, over to you, Sarah, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
No, thank you. And I guess I've just as part of that introduction to the Women's Voices, our very first interview was with Sarah. So welcome, Sarah. And that was back in 2019, 2020, I think. So so welcome, Sarah. So Melina, honestly, it's an absolute delight, and thanks again, because I know it's about 9 o'clock, I think, at your end. So just thanks for taking the time, really. And I'm just also how we tend to do it is we have a pre-brief as well, and just within the context of life at the minute and what's happening in the Ukraine, I'm sure we'll potentially be talking about co-ops in its widest sense as well. So, but I just wanted to acknowledge that because I know Melina, it's important to Melina. So Melina, how we tend to do this, so that you've sent us loads of great pictures, and that's how we've kind of, it's evolved really. Women have been bringing pictures in. So I just thought maybe the first question could be, just around, what started you on your journey with co-ops, but also your early life really. So maybe just talk us through that, and what after that we can just then talk through some pictures. So what were your influences early on? Where were you born? Who was around you? That kind of thing.
Well, I have to acknowledge there's a couple of influences who've been on the co-op journey with me. We've just been joined by Nicola and Bernadette, of course, who we've known each other quite a long time now because we've been in the co-op movement. I guess it's getting on for a couple of decades. Oh my God, that's really, the years are adding up. So hi to you, Nicola, and I said hi to Bernadette. It's lovely to see you after all these years. Well, a little bit about my family background. I'm from Tasmania, which is that island state that hangs off the bottom of Australia, and is the last sort of occupied landmass before you get to Antarctica. So it's not the red heart centre of Australia, but it is a beautiful place to grow up. It's very, very, it's still very, very strong in the environmental side of things, because so much of it's been preserved because of the hard work of environmentalists as wilderness. So I grew up very influenced by nature, really. It was all around me, and my family was very strong on environmentalism. Look, I grew up as an ordinary kid. I went through public education, which is in Australia, that's state education. government funded education. I went to university in Tasmania. I studied politics, women's studies and law. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I had sort of grand idealistic plans to be an environmental lawyer. But I've always had a passion for the theatre, and so that kind of pull to do that creative work, which is still very much important to my life now in different ways. I got into university and I thought, if I don't pursue this creative stuff now, I'm going to end up, in a corporate job, which is rather ironic since I now run a business council. But yeah, so I went off to work in theatre rather than going in and to the law and getting, proper sort of early practice in the legal profession. I kind of ran away, people run away to the circus. I ran away to a puppet theatre company and spent about a decade of my life in theatre and education, toured the world doing that. Actually, it was very exciting because, believe it or not, puppetry is a global movement as well as cooperatives. So it even has a puppetry Olympics, which a major sort of congress that's held every 4 years in different parts of the world. Yes, so I went to the Puppetry Global Festival, which was in Budapest the year that I toured with the company that I worked with. It was a fantastic thing to do with my life. I thought I was going to be an actor, a story, but I guess the connection to what I do now is it's always been about storytelling and connecting emotionally with people. I'm connected with co-ops emotionally, really, through the stories, and so I guess it has been what I was destined to do. But it's weird how you get to where you are.
It is. No, I mean, I just think the power of the arts in terms of, peace, social justice is really important as well. And there's so many links, I guess, with the cooperative movement. So that segues nicely, actually, Bex. If we can just, because I spotted a couple of pictures when you shared them with them, which I'm going to ask you to explain. But Bex, do you want us to share the pictures? And we'll just go through them because they're a really nice way to kind of get a sense of you as well. So the first one. So if you can explain each picture and who's on it and why you've chosen it.
Sure. You asked me for photos. So I just want to make that clear to people. Why is you giving all these family photos? You asked for photos, and look, honestly, I looked, there's corporate photographs and turning up to, I've been to so many co-op events, including some convened by Nicola in the International Year of Co-ops. Of course, there was a lot, but these are the ones that are close to my heart. So the lady on the screen is my beautiful mother and my twin brothers. So, I mean, I've put these photographs in because a really significant part of who I am is what happened to my family early on, because my father was killed in an air crash. He was a pilot, a brilliant helicopter pilot. But the thing about that, I guess, is so we were all, my mother was very young. She was 24. She had 4 children under 4 because she was pregnant when my father died. And the man you can see on the screen was my father just before he was killed. So he was 25. So I guess, I mean, the impact of something like that. I mean, I grew up incredibly happily in this great, with my siblings. We're really close in age. We really grew up like a tribe, and there's a lot of solidarity between us, still between us. And I guess that's very much influenced by what happened. But it's also, when somebody really significant dies in your life so young. I mean, I guess the thought has always been in our family, like, life is so precious, and it can be snatched away with you. And even in my father's life, very short life, he still managed to achieve a huge amount. mean, the other really significant thing about this was my mother's journey, because being only a very, very young woman, and at that time she hadn't really thought about a career. You know, she was a young woman in love, and having babies very quickly in succession, and, you know, really, really happy sort of living out. We lived in the country where my father flew for agricultural services mainly, and she was suddenly, like, from one minute, you know, happily married, pregnant, ready to have her fourth children, third and fourth children, because my twin brothers were born. You know, she was a widow and had no skills for working. So I saw her, you know, transform her life through education, going back, getting tertiary education, becoming a teacher. You know, we were on sort of, you know, welfare for a while, but she's, it's been a significant sort of event and role model for me, I suppose.
Gosh, that's powerful. Yeah. So what's this picture?
Yes, well, that's myself with my daughter, just literally, you know, literally the day after she was born, because for some reason I just picked her up, and I didn't feel like I should stay in hospital taking up a bed, and no one sort of came down to the ward and said, you don't have to go home yet, you're okay to stay for another 24 hours. So it is literally the day after she was born, I'm back at home. That's my grandmother and grandfather.
Yeah,
and it's been I have one daughter. It's been very significant in my life. Of course, there's my mum today, and a granddaughter. I
love that picture.
There's lots of girls being born. It's a real matriarchy. Okay, well, you asked about the puppetry.
Exactly. What is this, Melina? What is this picture?
Well, so when I look, I mean, all of the photographs, because it's a long time ago, from the 80s, they're not digital. So I don't have a lot of, I mean, this was still puppetry. So the types of the company, I did a lot of work in physical theatre and sort of dance and movement theatre. Was really, I spent most of the time. So this was a show that the company did, which used a lot of objects, physically moving objects, but also the objects became puppets as well. So it's that sort of Japanese bunraku style. It's just the only digitized shot I could find, but and I worked for companies. This company was called Etc. We were very fortunate. I think there's more arts festivals back then that did a lot more outdoor movement theatre. This was an act that we did all over the world, which basically would involve us kind of infiltrating a public space as these stereotype businessmen and moving through the space, and then we'd kind of end up, it's kind of like a modern day Swarm, doing something together, not a TikTok video, but I guess it's an early form of doing something together that was coordinated. So they're just a few shots of my early. Prover actually was doing that for a while. This was a Shakespeare play that I was in, Comedy of Errors. I guess I did this about. And then more and more, I got more and more on the writing side. So I ended up making some writing films and plays. So I made the next shot, that's a still from a film that I made when we lived in England for a while, that I wrote and directed.
What was that about, Melina? What was that?
A constant sort of theme in my life of writing or thinking about people's alienation from contemporary society, I suppose, really. I mean, in this is a short film I won the money to make the film from a script writing competition. So we were able to shoot it at quite a sort of high quality, which was great. So Yeah, I mean, this woman is very, it's about loneliness. She's so lonely that she invents a relationship with a man who may or may not actually be not real, or not, it might be part of her imagination, but it's really about the desire of the human soul to connect with other people, I suppose, thematically.
Yeah, great. Okay, next one. Who's this?
Yeah, do you know this wonderful woman, Janelle Orsi? She runs the Sustainable Law Centre in California that does a huge amount of work on cooperative law, legal reform, helping communities set up their community enterprises, thinking about sort of how to have sustainable economies through cooperative ownership and other models. She's just, I was thinking about the people along the way who've really influenced me. It was just so inspiring. She came out to Australia. She gave her time to talk to us and to the arts community about cooperative models. I've just always found people working in cooperatives so generous with their time and their willingness to come and share, the model, as indeed you guys are doing with this series. So
thank you.
The storytellers go on. Yeah, another wonderful woman who's an academic. Yes. Yep. Sitzel, who now she lives in Australia, but she's Finnish. She is just a wonderful, inspiring person who wants to spread. She's really working hard to try and get cooperatives into the curriculum in the university that she's in Australia. Just trying to battle that exclusion of cooperatives from mainstream curriculum about business and commerce, law, accounting. None of those cooperatives are really missing very much in Australia from any of the curriculum. That's so inspiring women in my life. My sister, who's an absolutely wonderful therapist. She's an osteopath. She's a fantastic surfer. She's just strong and passionate and outspoken.
It's a great picture, very expressive, isn't it? And who are these?
Yeah, so a lot of my work is to do with lobbying government and policy makers. So these are some women on, I guess that's more like, the British Tory side of government. I mean, the thing about, and that actually the woman on the right of me with her hair pulled back, she's now left politics. She decided that the hurly-burly of politics was too much, and she wanted to she just didn't want to compromise a young family, the time she had with her young family. So she left politics. But I mean, I think what's important in my job is to try and communicate the value of cooperatives to people from different backgrounds and ideologies. And I find that's the one strength in cooperatives, is that it can appeal as an idea, no matter what your sort of political persuasion is. And because it's hard to disagree with the idea of cooperatives or mutuals, which is why it's so frustrating that they continue to be so invisible. And we just have to keep banging the drum and sharing the great it shouldn't be a secret, just sharing the great opportunity to use the cooperative and mutual business model to help people live fulfilling good lives, and us not to harm the environment or other communities in the process of carrying out our businesses.
Yeah, that's great.
Just a snapshot of my work.
And who's this?
That's my husband and life partner.
And what's his name?
Wonderful man, Kevin, who is he grew up in London in Islington before it was back in the day when it was much more sort of working class. He's the son of Irish parents, and he grew up. He's an example of in one generation really going from people who came from quite impoverished backgrounds in the great diaspora of Irish society. They went to London really to find work digging the tunnels that so we can now go on the wonderful underground system. But Kevin and his sisters, they're all tertiary educated. They've all got great jobs. He's a journalist. Kevin's a journalist. And they've been, public institutions, education are just so important, to making sure that people have this equality of opportunities. So.
Yeah, great. And this is another one, isn't it? Where are you there?
So this is my beloved homeland, Tasmania, and this is just a walk we did earlier this year after COVID. A couple of years, meant we couldn't walk. So we're just at day one of a 7-day walk into the wilderness. My daughter and my husband, and we went with my nieces, my sister. A family sort of troop, and it was it's just wonderful to get back. Nature's very, very restorative and healing. Every time I take a walk like that, it was a digital detox, because you really can't get any coverage out there, and there's no electricity anyway. So you carry everything on your back, and I think I put a shot of my backpack in there just to prove I did carry it, because it was about 15 or 16 kilos. But it's good to keep trying to challenge yourself, I think, in different ways. It's not just mental or intellectual challenges, but physical ones are good to bring you. But it literally does, for me, bring me back to earth. So
it's interesting, because Suzanne Westover, who we were talking to last, she was talking about that, but just the power of the environment and this detox. I mean, she was talking it from a deep sea diving kind of perspective, but it was being in different elements physically, really, as well, which was just so restorative, really. So what's the next? Where are you here?
Look, that's just a couple of days ago, and a colleague took that because we just wanted to. It's International Women's Day, and because of Sarah, who's on the call today, your wonderful films. Thank you for making all of the films you've been making, but the one that you've made recently with our wonderful women cooperators in Ukraine. We just wanted to send a message of solidarity, and the pillows were just like, they're in the office all the time. So it was like, there we are in solidarity. So, so I have reached out to those women, Sarah. They, again, the power of stories, the power of being able to hear them talk about what's happening to them is very impactful.
I mean, it was. I mean, yeah, it was. And who's this?
Yes, so well, you have to, if you're a dog lover, you have to put your dog in. I don't know. As I get older, I just love animals more and more. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting sentimental as I get older. But my dog, he's a few years younger there, but he's quite getting quite old and decrepit. I don't know. There's something about having an older dog is, it's a privilege really for a dog to, live long enough to get old and be still with you, really, because they, it's that, I guess it's the unconditionality of their love. He's always constantly teaching me. He was rescued from a pound, so I suppose that was good to get him out of the pound, but yeah.
Happy. What's his name, by the way? What's his name?
Diesel. He came with that name. Kind of does.
It's a great.
It's not. Yeah, it's you yell out Diesel across the park, and people expect some Rottweiler, and
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing those with us.
Right.
It's always just a really nice way to kind of just get just a really good flavour of who you are and some of the influences. And one of the questions we were asking last week, and we want to just about, you know, because we're interviewing women across the world, really, you know, and on Australia, we asked about, you know, how has just growing up in Australia and being in Australia kind of influenced? Well, I mean, you've brought up in Tasmania, but you know, that wider, how has that influenced you? You know, do you have any reflections on that?
Yeah, look, I think we were talking about it, as you said, earlier in the week, and then I was reflecting a bit more. I mean, I think I grew up really, really believing, so I did internalize this idea that we're an egalitarian society, and that, you know, that we didn't have the kind of class differences of other societies, and that was a good thing. That, you know, it was really about giving everybody a fair go, and then, you know, it would be fair, you know, equal opportunity. So all of those ideas, you know, were very much the values that I grew up with, you know. And we've got an idea here about, sorry, that's our energy saving, because it's late at night, it turns off some of the lights. Yeah, so yeah, I think I think that's what sort of built my values. And also there were some real touch points that, you know, my family was quite political, as in we would always talk about politics. It was very important to the family discussion. And the big flashpoint when I was growing up in Tasmania was environmentalism. It was the beginning of the Green movement, and the founder of the Green Party in Australia, Bob Brown, is a Tasmanian, and there was a really kind of symbolic fight for a river system, the Franklin River, that it was just very influential when I was kind of settling my political ideas, I guess, to be part of that movement. That, you know, that other things were important, not just, you know, commerce or industry, or somehow it had to also respect, you know, the natural ecosystem and the natural environment and other things. As I've got older, I've had to really, it's been quite shocking to have to realize that actually there's so much inequality in Australian society. And, you know, the big thing that we're still grappling with here is our relationship with First Nations, you know, with the Indigenous community. And I just didn't realize growing up, because I ingested what we all did, which was just partial history. And there's a whole margin, you know, what happened with Indigenous people and the whole story of colonization, the way it was packaged up to us, is just not, it's just not the full story. It's not the story. So I've had to kind of reevaluate it. And also the cracks in Australian society, like many other places, are just widening around equalities. So it's just like, where do my ideas of egalitarianism sit now? But you know, it's the same for everyone. You need to re-examine what you thought and were taught in light of what you learn as you grow. So yeah, I mean, I have to really examine my own biases, conscious and unconscious, in light of what I'm learning all the time. So,
and I think that's where you said the storytelling definitely comes in again. You know, and I think, I mean, we were talking on Monday, weren't we, just about the Bamali film that Around the World.coop did, you know, and that was a really great storytelling of, you know, a co-op that, you know, really highlights all those issues and fights for them, really, through amazing artwork, actually. So yeah, and in terms of, one of the questions we had as well was just around, I mean, women and co-ops, you know, and you know, so what opportunities, or why do you think co-ops are, or are co-ops good for women? You know, what's that relationship between co-ops and women for you?
Well, it's, you know, I mean, the main thing for me, the real power for me is the economic participation, together with the, you know, the equality, the egalitarianism of them, the democracy. I mean, what we've got to kind of balance against that is how does that actually, how is that actually sort of, how is that behaviour seen in cooperatives? And we know that there are still issues around marginalisation and exclusion of women, which is why we're kind of working on projects like this. The idea, though, that you should be able to engage equally with other people in enterprise that makes you as an individual also an economic participant is really important to me.
Yeah.
And but I think that's what's important about cooperatives, is that it's not charity and it's not welfare. It is it's very much about giving agency to everybody to be able to participate, and bringing them in. So of course for women, I think it's really important for women because of so much of work that is feminized, still feminized, is lower paid, you know, is in the informal economy, often is gig work. So, you know, I mean, these things should issues for men, women, and all humanity, but they do impact women disproportionately. So co-op models, you know, co-ops can be that vehicle for agency and empowerment for women who are in either marginalised work or the informal economy. But just in general, to just say devoid of other considerations around gender or race or religion, you know, one member, one vote really means something, or should mean something, around it. To me, if feminism has a business model, it's cooperative.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be. We know that, you know, the structures of society, there is still a gender lens that is applied to a lot of, you know, workplaces and industries and sectors. And of course, you know, that happens in cooperatives as well. But as an idealized thing, it is actually a humanistic model. So, you know, it should be of the highest value to women in their pursuit of, you know, of a feminist world.
Yeah. I love that quote, you know, if feminism has a business model, it's co-ops. It's great. So I'm going to be using that. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I think from my lens, you know, because we do a lot of work, you know, in development, in international co-op development, you know, and I think you really do see the power of co-ops with women in the global south as well, you know, that real agency for change, really, in a very patriarchal environment, really. And it's that, and especially also in post-conflict as well, you know, in Rwanda, there was lots of women cooperatives, you know, that were just doing amazing things, really, emerging out of really tricky situations, really. So, yeah, and I just, you know, I mean, and we want to talk a bit as well about some of the key challenges of our times, and, you know, where co-ops, you know, and that solidarity network can offer support. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious, really, but what do you think some of the key challenges of our times are, and how can co-ops and women in those co-ops, or women generally, just respond to that?
God, it's just
a light question for your email.
Yeah, no, it's such an important, it's just, you know, the kind of lens that we're looking at things today, I hope, because it should be front of mind, is, you know, is the war that's, you know, that's going on. You know, I just think we just have to call out what's happening to our, you know, our cooperators, that are, you know, sitting in bunkers and in just facing unimaginable fear and you know, circumstances. But I think really if the big problem is that we do not have an inclusive global economic system. That means that you know, the dystopian reality of that is that, you know, trust networks break down, wealth is not distributed in a way that allows people to equally participate, and you get a whole cascading range of issues that are very much about not having the right purpose for why we do enterprise together. You know, and all of those issues around the way that how we've got to the point that we have, where we have a climate emergency because we've enabled ourselves to get caught up in a system where we would actually engage in behaviours that, you know, are clearly imperiling our very survival. But the whole incentives for working together in, you know, where the primary purpose is to maximise profit, just cannot allow for, you know, for the containment of all of those issues. We're just going to continue to destroy ourselves in the pursuit of money as an end in itself, when actually it's, you know, it's we're trying to pursue happiness or well-being. So I you know, I do think a lot of it is about the need to have reform our economic system so it can work. It sounds so cliche, but it has to work for people. It has to work for planet. You know, it has to work for all of the stakeholders. Otherwise, there'll be winners and losers, as we see. And we are, it's part of the complexity of humanity is its richness as well. So it's not about just kind of putting grey on everything. The thing that I really love about cooperatives is that they are a form of rational self-interest, that they do, if they're well run, well governed, have inclusivity and diversity, that it's just rational for people to work in a system where their own self-interest is best served by the collective interest, which allows for individual autonomy and agency as well. You know, it allows for individual differences. It allows for independent businesses to work together, for example. It allows for entrepreneurship. You know, it allows for hares and tortoises in society, but it just creates a rational structure around why you're doing that together.
I'm going to bring Bex in a minute, but just, I mean, it was really interesting when I was doing my peace studies. Actually, one of the key things they always said is about enlightened self-interest. You know, if you're well, I'm well. If I'm well, you're well. And it's that social contract, really. And it really stuck with me, you know, and that's exactly what you're saying here around, you know, that's what is at the heart of, you know, we need to be well, and you need to be well for me to be well. So this whole collectivism is around that. So it's fascinating that. Bex, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I was just going to bring it back to the environmental aspect, because when you were talking earlier on, you know, growing up in Tasmania, how, you know, the country you grew up in and the environmental interest you had was obviously really part of your formative years. And Australia right now is going through some awful flooding, and, you know, if it wasn't for what's going on in Ukraine, which is rightly front and center, this would be headline news all over the world, the flooding that's going on in Australia. So I just wanted to ask, kind of from a co-op point of view, how are your members and how is BCCM supporting them, and particularly any women? Are the floods particularly affecting women, or is it more agricultural or urban?
Well, in some areas the floods have just wiped out the entire community and all of the infrastructure. It's literally as if a cyclone's come through and it's just ground zero. Like a bomb being dropped in some areas. So the whole community, young, old, you know, rich, poor, women, men, dogs, cats, everything's just been obliterated. But the community is still there. It is still, and that in many cases is being coordinated, and the solidarity I think this is the real kind of opportunity with cooperatives, is how they deepen democratic skills and connections, our ability to do things together and coordinate activity in a rational way, and also the deep trust networks. So in some of the areas that have been impacted, it just so happens that there are highly cooperatised regions as well, particularly the one you might have seen on the news a lot, which is an area called Lismore in the northern rivers of New South Wales, which has been particularly hard hit. And in that community, a lot of our members have been hit because the large employers in town are cooperatives. It's a farming district, so there's a lot of food and beverage manufacture, and most of the financial institutions are credit unions. So that's good for the community, because they've just turned their whole businesses around to they didn't have to turn them around. They're just community facing. So they've done incredible things with the resources that they had, as impacted as they were, to make sure that they can just build back social and physical infrastructure as soon as possible. Things like banking services, there's been nowhere for two weeks to get cash, to get money at all, and internet services have been down, telecommunications. You can't use internet banking. So you're back to a cash economy to buy whatever little goods you can get from as stores open up and things, but there's no sort of digital banking service. So they've clubbed together the credit unions. They've opened a banking hub out of the university, because the university is on higher ground. So just brilliant but practical ideas like that, choppering in ATMs and dropping cash down so people could get cash to go and buy food and nappies and things. And the thing about having a large community-owned business like a dairy processor, or we have a meat processor, is that has lots of the assets that you need to get a community back. Refrigeration, been vitally important. They just got things out of stores that were going under, and they had somewhere big, like a really big fridge to put them in. Fuel supplies, chopper pads, just the things of big business, the infrastructure of big business. But being cooperatively owned, the people who work there are all locals, the managers local, the boards in town, so they know each other. And those informal information networks are what's working really well. But it's like the invisible hand of cooperatives, as so often happens, the invisible impact of community working together in other ways, not just through cooperatives, is not what's really, that's just going on almost like an informal level.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always fascinated with that, around the implicit value of co-ops, and also there again, around the implicit conversations that happen with co-ops, and I know there again, Sarah's touched on this with her own research with women, it's those implicit spaces that actually people don't really talk much about, but are so important, like the networks as well, which, yeah, it's fascinating. I'm conscious we've got 10 minutes actually. There's a couple of things I also want to talk about. And I mean, there's such big issues these to condense them into.
But it's back to Sarah's film with the women cooperators, they were already talking about agricultural cooperatives, which are, it's the supply chain. If it's short, if it's informed, if it's local and locally owned, it's going to be able to restore, this idea of resilience and recovery, restore sustainable life, the quickest. Local knowledge is key in a crisis. So, I drew a lot from listening to what they were saying about, and why I would encourage people to give to cooperative development funds, because the money's going to go back out through cooperatives, which is going to provide the accountability on the ground, and deliver back money directly to community. It's going to go into community hands with as little intermediaries in between. Which is we've got a portal, a flood fund from the cooperative and mutual movement, which is on our website. If anyone wants to give to the cooperative sector for flood relief, that's the place I'd recommend you giving it to.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we started doing that in the UK as well, just around that co-op to co-op principle 6 kind of work, really, in terms of crisis. And that's what this International Women's Working Group, women's in everything for me, but the working group, and it's just that keeping in the co-op family, really. So it's okay, this sounds quite a trite question, but it's not a trite question. We've got just going back to the message, really. It's not trite at all, actually. What message do you want to give to women? So one of the key things that, why we do this, well, there's multiple motivations, but one of the key things is, messages to younger women or women outside the movement, looking at role models, which you are, what message would you want to give to other women, either inside, younger women in the movement, women outside the movement, in the world we're in today?
Well, I feel a bit, it's very humbling to be asked a question like that. I'm sort of feel like I'm learning, still learning so much. I think the key thing that I'm learning at the moment that's really important, that seems to be more and more important for me to find allies, is to think about this as just, hold each other up. Always try and hold, fight and be allies. And I think it's very much now about, just thinking about how I want to approach feminism now. It is really about this intersectional thing of diversity and inclusion. So our allies are each other. They are other women. They are marginalised people. So we as women know what it's like to have voice marginalised, because, for most of us, even in positions of so-called power, you just are reminded in little and big ways quite often that, there's different ways of silencing your voice. So, which is why, economic power, economic participation, I think, is very important to women's agency and, to have voice. But I think that knowing what it's like to have your voice excluded is, gives women a particular insight into looking around and thinking, well, who else is it younger people here that are being excluded? Is their voice being excluded? Is it older people? Is it, a different ethnicity? And that knowledge is power, because by including people on, giving them voice too, it's just like a domino effect, and it builds. That's my message to younger women. And also, I'm very, very impacted at the moment by the power and the passion of younger women. I'm really deeply impressed and amazed by whether it's Greta Thunberg or in Australia, our Australian of the Year, not Young Australian of the Year, the woman who's just held the position of Woman of Australian of the Year for the last year is a young woman called Grace Tame. And her, her passion is also contains there's a fury in there as well. And I think there's a strength in that fury, like, well articulated, but directed, anger. There's an anger coming out, and it's good for it to be seen as well. So stay angry until we change it.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching there's a mini documentary on the what was it? Is it the what's it called? Anyway, I'll come back to that. But there was the Russian women pop group. Is it Pussy Riot?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
they were
right.
fantastic.
Yeah, that's an amazing documentary. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
thinking, gosh, I mean, the sacrifices they made, but the strong, powerful women, really. It's just that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, we've got another 5 minutes, and there's the standard question we have for each woman is: if you are stranded on a desert island, what 3 items would you take with you?
I did have a little think about this. It's kind of difficult. Where do you start? But okay, so my 3 items I've landed on, if that's really all I can take on the life raft, so like something to feed my soul, which is, books, music, all of those things. It would be impossible to think of life without that. But I think given that you've only given me 3 things, I think absolutely a pen and paper, because I just would need to keep my humanity. I just need to be able to express myself as a person and write it, to be able to write things down, would be my way of of connecting with humanity. So I'm imagining this is alone on an island, is it? No,
you are on your own on this island, yes.
So you get, if you
get
can
pen
write,
and paper, yeah,
you can talk to other people, you can express ideas, you can investigate things, you can write your own books, since it's impossible to think of just one book to take. So yeah, pen and paper. Lemons, or a lemon, is very important to me, because
so this is a new
just
one.
It's just an amazing, it's an amazingly flexible piece of food that you can cure your raw fish with it, you can sweeten your water, you can squeeze it on anything, and it will make anything, the lovely pawpaws that are growing on this tropical island. It's just going to be able to be make all the food sources sustaining and nice. And well, I'd have olive oil as well, and then I'd be set. But no, I won't. And coffee, because rituals will be very important. And just again, it's that thing of being able to be connected to humanity in your isolation. So I'd be fine, actually. Pen, paper, coffee, nice little lemon flavored water.
Yeah,
I'm trying to decide whether pen and paper counts as 1 or 2 items.
See,
oh.
We are strict on this. I think we are strict, but I think this time we can allow pen and paper. So yeah, you'd be fine. So we're coming towards the end. So, but any questions? Was there any? We've got a couple of minutes because we started a bit late. So any kind of questions from? And because we're a small group, if anyone wants just to kind of shout out, really. But yeah, before we finish, or any reflections on this morning, or have you been triggered by any thoughts?
I'm just thinking about Melina's writing that's going to arrive in a bottle in the ocean for me, telling me her next wonderful idea that she wants to implement. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll wait at the beach.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm very new to the co-op world. I'm from a music background, but it has been such a wonderful journey learning more about co-ops over the last few months and working under Melina. She is every bit as much of a queen as she seems. She's amazing to work for, and she's a powerhouse.
I got my queen earrings.
I know she's been working for at least 12 hours today, and she probably is only, stopped for coffee. So she's every bit as genuine as she seems, and she's making such a difference to the co-op sector and mutual sector in Australia.
Thanks so much, Lauren.
Oh,
That's really
Lauren,
good words.
that's
Thank you.
lovely.
And thanks to Lauren for sending. So in the chat, Lauren's included a couple of links, including a link to some photos of the East Coast floods, and also a link to the donation portal, which is the Australian. Is that the mutual funds? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've got one other question then, if no one else has. I mean, yesterday or day before yesterday, sorry, was International Women's Day, and the theme was breaking the bias. And you've spoken a little bit about this already, about the bias facing women, especially Indigenous communities as well. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, about what your message would be to women around the world to help them break the bias in their co-ops or just in their life generally.
Yeah. Well, I just was reflecting on, in the co-op movement, I think I told you about discovering the wonderful story. Maybe Bernadette told me about, someone told me about Eliza Brearley, the first woman to join a co-op, the Rochdale Pioneers, became a member. So, that was a long time before women had the franchise politically, in 1844. I think it was 1917 before women got the vote. So, we have a long tradition of inclusion and enfranchisement of women. So we absolutely should be at the forefront of all. We should be able to stand up of all business movements and say we're the most inclusive. And we're not there yet. I mean, we're definitely on the road there, and there is the values and principles, and there is the structure for inclusion, but a lot of not exclusion occurs. It's kind of very subtextual. So I think it's going to be, the bias is there until we call it out, and we call it out as again, it's that intersectional piece that is where that's where my sort of thoughts are going now. And I just don't think now that women can get that we have to focus on what our critical needs are, like proper parental leave, and work environments that are inclusive of parenting are just critical for women to take, to take an equal role. But we just have to try and bring everybody that's excluded from economic participation on this journey, this next journey. So I think, if we do that in an inclusive way, I think the women's momentum is going to be even greater. Yeah, I do think women need to get better at the democratic skills that are needed to get into co-ops as well. One of the ways we do it, get excluded, is actually you have to have confidence to put your hand up. Being elected to a board, it's a popularity contest as much as anything, and those skills, those leadership skills are still taught and inculcated by men probably more than women. And you can't be what you can't see. So that chicken or egg, like seeing more women in politics, for example, and just taking it as a given that you should be able to see a very diverse and representative group of leaders. And co-ops reflect society. So I think that is an issue. So a piece on leadership, I think, led by the co-op movement, what are the skills required to actually stand for election, stand for boards, could work very well, I think. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Melina. That's a really good note to end it on, really. So we'll wrap this up now, and just sort of a final, just to say thank you, Melina. You can now go home and go to bed. But yeah, and it's been an absolute joy. We're going to resume our Women's Voices in May. So we're just now developing our next lineup of women. But Melina, thank you for that. And if you can stay on with us, Melina, we'll just have a bit of a debrief later. But thank you everybody else for just taking the time, you know, and this will go online again, so they're all now on the Co-op News website. So if you just want to rewatch this or just tweet about it, you know, I just encourage everyone to listen to this. So but thank you, Melina.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you. Thanks very much.